Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. But with sound self-confidence, you can succeed. A sense of inferiority and inadequacy interferes with the attainment of your hopes. But self-confidence leads to self-realization and successful achievement. It is appalling to realize the number of pathetic people who are hampered and made miserable by the malady called the inferiority complex. But you need not suffer from this trouble. When proper steps are taken, it can be overcome. You can develop creative faith in yourself, faith that is justified. After speaking to a convention of businessmen in a city auditorium, I was on the stage greeting people when a man approached me and with a peculiar intensity of manner asked, "May I talk with you about a matter of desperate importance to me?" I asked him to remain until the others had gone. Then we went backstage and sat down. "I'm in this town to handle the most important business deal of my life," he explained. "If I succeed, it means everything to me. If I fail, I'm done for." I suggested that he relax a little, that nothing was quite that final. If he succeeded, that was fine. If he didn't, well, tomorrow was another day. "I have a terrible disbelief in myself," he said dejectedly. "I have no confidence. I just don't believe I can put it over. I'm very discouraged and depressed. Here I am, 40 years old. Why is it that all my life I've been tormented by inferiority feelings, by lack of confidence, by self-doubt? You talk about the power of positive thinking. How can I get some faith in myself?" "There are 2 steps to take," I replied. "First, it is important to discover why you have these feelings of no power. That requires analysis and will take time. We must approach the maladies of our emotional life as a physician probes to find something wrong physically. This cannot be done immediately, certainly not in our brief interview tonight, and it may require treatment to reach a permanent solution. But to pull you through this immediate crisis, I can give you a formula which will work if you will use it. As you walk down the street tonight, I suggest that you repeat certain words which I shall give you. Say them over several times after you get into bed. When you awaken tomorrow, repeat them 3 times before arising. On the way to your important appointment, say them 3 additional times. Do this with an attitude of faith, and you will receive sufficient strength to deal with this problem. Following is the affirmation which I gave him. "I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me." I watched him square his shoulders and walk out into the night. He seemed a pathetic figure, and yet the way he carried himself as he disappeared showed that creative faith was already at work in his mind. Subsequently, he reported that this simple formula did wonders for him, and he added, "It seems incredible that a few words from the Bible, a positive point of view, could do so much for a person." There are various causes of inferiority feelings, and not a few stem from childhood. For example, an executive consulted me about a young man whom he wished to advance in his company. But he explained he cannot be trusted with important secret information, and I'm sorry, for otherwise I would make him my administrative assistant. He has all the other necessary qualifications, but he talks too much, and without meaning to do so, divulges matters of a private and important nature. Upon analysis, I found that this young man talked too much simply because of an inferiority feeling. To compensate for that, he succumbed to the temptation of parading his knowledge. He associated with men who were rather well-to-do, all of whom had attended college and belonged to a fraternity. But this boy was reared in poverty. He'd not been a college man or a fraternity member. Thus, he felt himself inferior to his associates in education and in social background. To build himself up with his associates and to enhance his self-esteem, His subconscious mind, which always seeks to provide a compensatory mechanism, supplied him with a means for raising his ego. He was on the inside in the industry and accompanied his superior to conferences where he met outstanding men and listened to important private conversations. He reported just enough of his inside information to cause his associates to regard him with admiration and envy. This served to elevate his self-esteem and satisfy his desire for recognition. When his employer became aware of the cause of this personality trait, being a kindly and understanding man, he pointed out to the young man how his inferiority feelings caused his unreliability in confidential matters. This self-knowledge, together with a sincere practicing of the techniques of faith, made him a valuable asset to his company. His real powers were released. The great secret for eliminating the inferiority complex is to fill your mind to overflowing with faith. Develop a tremendous faith in God, and that will give you a humble yet soundly realistic faith in yourself. A wise old man told me once, the best way to get over an inferiority complex is simply to pray big prayers and so to have big faith. Doubtless he was right, for the scriptures say, according to your faith be it unto you. Big faith in God will give you real faith in yourself. We build up feelings of insecurity or security by how we think. If in our thoughts we constantly fix attention upon sinister expectations of dire events that might happen, the result will be constantly to feel insecure. And what is even more serious is the tendency to create, by the power of thought, the very condition we fear. Lack of self-confidence apparently is one of the great problems besetting people today. In a university, a survey was made of 600 students in psychology courses. The students were asked to state their most difficult personal problem. 75% listed lack of confidence. It can safely be assumed that the same large proportion is true of the population generally. Everywhere you encounter people who are inwardly afraid, who shrink from life, who suffer from a deep sense of insecurity. Deep within themselves, they mistrust their ability to meet responsibilities or to grasp opportunities. Always they are beset by the vague fear that something is not going to be quite right. They do not believe that they have it in them to be what they want to be. And so they try to make themselves content with something less than that of which they are capable. Thousands upon thousands go crawling through life on their hands and knees, defeated and afraid. And in most cases, such frustration of power is unnecessary. For example, a man 52 years of age consulted me. He was in great despondency. He revealed utter despair. He told me he was all through. He said that everything he'd built up over his lifetime had been swept away. Everything? I asked. Everything, he repeated. He was through, he reiterated. I have nothing left at all. Everything is gone. There is no hope. And I'm too old to start all over again. I've lost all faith. Naturally, I felt sympathetic toward him, but it was evident that his chief trouble was the fact that dark shadows of hopelessness had entered his mind and discolored his outlook, distorting it. Behind this twisted thinking, his true powers had retreated, leaving him without force. So I said, suppose we take a piece of paper and write down the values you have left. There's no use, he sighed. I haven't a single thing left. I thought I told you that. Well, I said, let's just see anyway. Then I asked him, is your wife still with you? Why, yes, of course, and she is wonderful. We've been married for 30 years. She would never leave me no matter how bad things are. All right, let's put that down. Your wife is still with you, and she will never leave you no matter what happens. Have you any children? Yes, he replied, I have 3, and they are certainly wonderful. I've been touched by the way they've come to me and said, Dad, we love you, and we'll stand by you. Well, then I said, that's number 2. 3 children who love you and who will stand by you. Got any friends, I asked. Yes, he said, I really have some fine friends, and I must admit they've been pretty nice. They've come around and they've said they would like to help me, but they can't do anything. Well, that's number 3. You have some friends who would like to help you and who hold you in esteem. How about your integrity? Have you done anything wrong? My integrity's all right, he replied. I've always tried to do the right thing, and my conscience is clear. All right, I said, we will put that down as number 4, integrity. How about your health? My health is all right, he answered. I guess I'm in pretty good shape physically. So let's put that down as number 5, good physical health. How about the United States? Do you think it's still a land of opportunity? Oh, yes, he says, there's real opportunity here for everyone. Well, then that's number 6. You live in the United States, land of opportunity. Then I asked, how about your religious faith? Do you believe God will help you? Yes, he said, I do not think I could have gotten through this at all without help from God. I shoved the paper across the table at him. Take a look at that. I guess you have quite a total of assets, more than you thought. I thought you told me everything had been swept away. He grinned ashamedly. I guess I didn't think of those things. I never thought of it that way. Perhaps things aren't so bad at that, he said pensively. Maybe I can start all over again if I can only get some confidence. Well, he got it, and he did start all over again. But he did so only when he changed his viewpoint, his mental attitude. Faith swept away his doubts, and more than enough power to overcome all his difficulties emerged from within him. This incident illustrates a profound truth which is expressed in an important statement by the famous psychiatrist Dr. Carl Menninger. He said, attitudes are more important than facts. Any fact facing us, however difficult, even seemingly hopeless, is not nearly so important as our attitude toward that fact. How you think about a fact may defeat you before you do anything about it. On the other hand, a confident and optimistic thought pattern can modify or overcome the fact altogether. It's how you look at it that makes all of the difference in the world. One of the most powerful concepts in confident living is the thought that God is actually with you, helping you, and releasing your powers. Think about that always when you think about your difficulty. And the new way that you think about your difficulties will give you a happy and successful outcome. Everyone wants peace of mind. A primary method for filling your thoughts with peace is to practice emptying the mind of peace-disturbing factors. I should like to underscore the importance of a frequent mental catharsis. I recommend a mind emptying at least twice every day, more often if necessary. Definitely practice emptying your mind of fears, hates, insecurities, regrets, and guilt feelings. The mere fact that you consciously make this effort to empty your mind tends to give relief. I conducted a religious service on board the steamship Lurline on a recent voyage to Honolulu. In the course of my talk, I suggested that people who were carrying worries in their minds might go to the stern of the vessel and, in imagination, take each anxious thought out of the mind, drop it overboard, and watch it disappear in the wake of the ship. It seems an almost childlike suggestion, but a man came to me later and said, I did as you suggested, and am amazed at the relief it has given me. During this voyage, he said, every evening at sunset, I'm going to drop all my worries overboard until I begin to develop the psychology of casting them entirely out of my consciousness. Every day I shall watch them disappear in the great ocean of time. Doesn't the Bible say something about forgetting those things that are behind? The man to whom this suggestion appealed is not an impractical sentimentalist. On the contrary, he is a person of extraordinary mental stature, an outstanding leader in his field. Of course, emptying the mind is not enough. When the mind is emptied, something is bound to enter. The mind cannot long remain a vacuum. You cannot go around permanently with an empty mind. It is necessary to refill the emptied mind, or the old unhappy thoughts which you have cast out will return to plague you. To prevent that happening, immediately start filling your mind with creative and healthy thoughts. Then, when the old fears and hates and worries that have haunted you for so long try to edge back in, they will in effect find a sign on the door of your mind reading, "Occupied." At intervals during the day, practice thinking a carefully selected series of peaceful thoughts. Let mental pictures of the most peaceful scenes you have ever witnessed pass across your mind, as, for example, some beautiful valley filled with the hush of evening time. Or recall the silvery light of the moon falling upon rippling waters. Or remember the sea washing gently upon soft shores of sand. Such peaceful thought images will work upon your mind as a healing medicine. Also practice the technique of suggestive articulation. That is, repeat audibly some peaceful words. Words have profound suggestive power, and there is healing in the very saying of them. Use such a word as tranquility. Repeat that word slowly several times. Tranquility is one of the most beautiful and melodic of all English words, and the mere saying of it tends to induce a tranquil state. Another healing word is serenity. Picturize serenity as you say it. Repeat it slowly and in the mood of which the word is a symbol. The words of the Bible have a particularly strong therapeutic value. Drop them into your mind, allowing them to dissolve in consciousness, and they will spread a healing balm throughout your thoughts. A group of businessmen were having a conference. One man was very much on edge. He was snappy, argumentative, high-strung. Everyone present knew him well and realized he was under nervous pressure. But finally, his irritating attitudes began to get on everybody's nerves. Presently, he opened his traveling bag, took out a big bottle of brackish-looking medicine, and poured himself a large dose. Asked about this medicine, he growled, "Oh, it's something for nerves. I feel like I'm going to break in pieces." This medicine was recommended, and I've swallowed several bottles of it, but I don't seem to get any better. The other men laughed. Then one said in a kindly manner, "Bill, I can give you some medicine for those nerves that will do you more good than that. I know, because it cured me, and I was worse off than you are." "What is this medicine?" snapped the other. The other man reached into his bag and pulled out a book. "This book will do the job, and I really mean it. I suppose you think it's strange that I carry a Bible around in my bag, but I'm not ashamed of it. I've been carrying this Bible for the past 2 years, and I've marked places in it that help keep my mind at peace. It works for me, and I think it can do something for you, too." The others were listening with interest to this unusual speech. The nervous man had sunk low in his chair. Seeing that he was making an impression, the speaker continued, "I had a peculiar experience in a hotel one night which got me into the habit of reading the Bible. I was getting into a pretty tense state. Standing by the dresser, my eye happened to fall upon a Bible lying there. Something impelled me, and I opened a book to one of the Psalms and started to read. I was interested, but certainly surprised at myself. Me reading the Bible. It was a laugh, but I kept on reading. Soon I came to the 23rd Psalm, to that line, 'He leadeth me beside the still waters.' I liked that. It sort of got me. I sat there repeating it over and over, and the next thing I knew, I woke up. Apparently, I had dropped off to sleep and slept soundly. I slept only about 15 minutes, but upon awakening was as refreshed and rested as if I'd had a good night's sleep. So, after that experience," he said, "I use the Bible regularly, and I'm not nearly so nervous as I used to be." So he added, "Try that, Bill, and see if it doesn't work for you." Bill did try it, and he kept on trying it. And it must have worked well, for he is easy to get along with now. His emotions are under control. These men found that getting peace of mind isn't complicated. You merely feed your mind with thoughts that cause it to be peaceful. To have a mind full of peace, merely fill it full of peace. It's as simple as that. In a business office, two men were having a serious conversation. One, heavily troubled by a business and personal crisis, sat dejectedly, a picture of despair. Together, these men had explored the problem from every angle, but seemingly without result, which only served to deepen the troubled man's discouragement. "I guess no power on earth can save me," he sighed. The other reflected for a moment, then spoke rather diffidently. "I wouldn't look at it that way. Personally, I believe there's an answer to every problem. There is a power that can help you." Then slowly he asked, "Why not try prayer power?" He learned practical prayer techniques, and in due course, matters turned out satisfactorily. Not that he didn't have difficulties. In fact, he had rather a hard time of it, but ultimately he worked out of his trouble. Now he believes in prayer power so enthusiastically that I recently heard him say, "Every problem can be solved, and solved right, if you pray." A businessman with a creative and unique mind worked out a simple formula for solving his problems and overcoming his difficulties through prayer power. It is a curious formula, but I have practiced it and personally know that it works. The formula is this: prayerize, picturize, actualize. By prayerize, my friend meant a daily system of creative prayer. When a problem arose, he talked it over with God very simply and directly. Moreover, he did not talk with God as to some vast and far-off shadowy being, but conceived of God as being with him in his office, in his home, on the street, in his car, always nearby as a partner or as a close associate. This man prayerized his daily life. The second and third points in his formula go together. When either failure or success is picturized, it strongly tends to actualize in terms equivalent to the mental image pictured. To assure something worthwhile happening, first pray about it and test it according to God's will. Then print a picture of it on your mind as happening, holding the picture firmly in consciousness. Work hard and intelligently, thus doing your part. Practice believing and continue to hold the picturization firmly in your thoughts. You will be astonished at the strange ways in which the thing prayed about and pictured will actually come to pass. For example, a woman discovered that her husband was drifting from her. Theirs had been a happy marriage, but the wife had become preoccupied in social affairs, and the husband had become busy in his work. Before they knew it, the close old-time companionship was lost. One day, she discovered his interest in another woman. She lost her head and became hysterical. She consulted her minister, who adroitly turned the conversation to herself. She admitted being a careless homemaker and that she had also become self-centered, sharp-tongued, and nagging. She then confessed that she had never felt herself the equal of her husband. She had a profound sense of inferiority regarding him, feeling unable to maintain equality with him socially and intellectually. So she retreated into an antagonistic attitude that manifested itself in petulance and criticism. Accordingly, she became unattractive. The minister saw that the woman had more talent, ability, and charm than she was revealing. He suggested that she create an image or picture of herself as capable and as attractive. He gave her instructions in how to pray and how spiritually to picturize. He also advised her to hold a mental image of the restoration of the old-time companionship, to picture a restored harmony. She was to hold this picture with faith. About this time, her husband informed her that he wanted a divorce. She had conquered herself to the extent of being able to receive this request with calmness. She simply replied that she was willing if he wanted it. but suggested a deferral of the decision for 90 days on the ground that divorce is so final. If at the end of 90 days you still feel you want a divorce, I will cooperate with you. She said this calmly. He gave her a quizzical look, for he had expected an outburst. Night after night he went out, and night after night she sat at home. But she pictured him as seated in his old chair. She painted an image of him there comfortably reading as in the old days. She visualized him as puttering around the house, painting and fixing things as he had formerly done. She visualized the two of them playing golf together and taking hikes as they once did. She maintained this picture with steady faith, and one night there he actually sat in his old chair. She looked twice to be sure that it was the reality rather than the picturization, but perhaps a picturization is a reality, for at any rate, the actual man was there. Occasionally he would be gone, but more and more nights he sat in his chair. Then he began to read to her as in the old days. Then, one nice Saturday afternoon, he asked, "What do you say to a game of golf?" The days went by pleasantly until she realized that the 90th day had arrived. So that evening she said quietly, "Bob, this is the 90th day." "What do you mean?" he asked, puzzled. "The 90th day. Why, don't you remember? We agreed to wait 90 days to settle that divorce matter, and this is the day." He looked at her for a moment, then, hidden behind his paper, turned a page, saying, "Don't be silly. I couldn't possibly get along without you. Where did you ever get the idea I was going to leave you?" The formula proved a powerful mechanism. This woman prayerized, she picturized, and the sought-for result was actualized. Prayer power scientifically solved her problem, and his as well. "Why does my boy fail in every job?" asked a puzzled father about his 30-year-old son. It was indeed difficult to understand the failure of this young man, for seemingly he had everything. Nevertheless, he had a tragic flair for failure. Everything he touched went wrong. He tried hard enough, yet somehow missed success. Presently, he found a simple but effective answer. Practicing this newfound secret, he lost the flair for failure. His personality began to focus, his powers to fuse. "You amaze me," I commented. "A few years ago, you were failing at everything. Now you've worked up an original idea into a fine business. You're a leader in your community. Please explain this remarkable change." "Really, it was quite simple," he replied. "I merely learned the magic of believing. I discovered that if you expect the worst, you're likely to get the worst. And if you expect the best, you're likely to get the best. It all happened through actually practicing a verse from the Bible. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth." In a flash of insight, I realized that the key I had missed was that my mind was not trained to believe, to have faith in either God or myself. I practiced your outlined techniques of faith. I trained myself to think positively. He smiled and said, "God and I struck up a partnership." Then things began to change almost at once. I cultivated the habit of expecting the best, not the worst, and that is the way my affairs have turned out lately. I guess it's a kind of miracle, he concluded. But it wasn't miraculous at all. He had learned to use one of the most powerful laws in this world, of psychology and religion, namely, change your mental habits to belief instead of disbelief. Learn to expect, not to doubt. In so doing, you bring everything into the realm of possibility. William James, the famous psychologist, said, "Our belief at the beginning of a doubtful undertaking is the one thing that ensures the successful outcome of your venture. To learn to believe is of primary importance. It is the basic factor of succeeding in any undertaking. When you expect the best, you release a magnetic force in your mind. which by a law of attraction tends to bring the best to you. It is amazing how a sustained expectation of the best sets in motion forces which cause the best to materialize. Let me give you a suggestion. I guarantee it will work. Start reading the New Testament and notice the number of times it refers to faith. Select a dozen of the strongest statements about each one. Let these faith concepts germinate in your conscious mind. Say them over and over, especially just before going to sleep. By a process of spiritual osmosis, they will sink from your conscious into your subconscious mind, and in time will reslant your basic thought pattern. This process will change you into a believer, into an expector, and when you become such, you will in due course become an achiever. Things become better when you expect the best, for being freed from self-doubt, you put your whole self, your whole heart into your endeavor. Nothing can stand in the way of the man who focuses his entire self, his whole mind, on a problem. A famous trapeze artist was instructing his students on how to perform on the high trapeze bar. Then he told them to demonstrate their ability. One student, looking up at the insecure perch upon which he must perform, was suddenly filled with fear. He had a terrifying vision of himself falling to the ground. He couldn't move a muscle, so deep was his fright. "I can't do it! I can't do it," he gasped. The instructor put his arm around the boy's shoulder and said, "Son, you can do it, and I will tell you how." Then he made one of the wisest remarks I have ever heard. He said, "Throw your heart over the bar, and your body will follow." Write that one sentence on a card and put it in your pocket. Place it under the glass on your desktop. Tack it up on your wall. Stick it in your shaving mirror. Better still, write it on your mind. It's packed with power, that sentence. Throw your heart over the bar, and your body will follow. It means throw your faith over your difficulty. Throw your affirmation over every barrier. Throw your visualization of success over your obstacles. In other words, throw the spiritual essence of you over the bar, and your material self will follow in the victory groove thus pioneered by your faith-inspired mind. Expect the best, not the worst, and you will attain your heart's desire. It is indeed a fact that the person who thinks with positive self-reliance and optimism magnetizes his condition, and he releases inner power that helps him to attain his goal. So the secret is, expect the best at all times. Never even think of the worst. Drop it out of your thought. Relegate it. Let there be no idea in your mind that the worst will happen. Always entertain the concept of the best, never the concept of the worst, for whatever idea you take into your mind and hold there can grow and can materialize. Therefore, take the best about everything into your mind, and only that. Make it your obsession. Expect the best, and spiritually creative mind power aided by God power will produce the best. You do not need to be a victim of worry. Worry is one of the most unhealthy and destructive of all mental habits. You were not born with the worry habit. You acquired it. And because we can change any habit and any acquired attitude, you can cast worry from your mind. Why should we take the worry problem seriously? The reason is clearly stated by Dr. Smiley Blanton, eminent psychiatrist, who says, anxiety is the great modern plague. A famous psychologist asserts that fear is the most disintegrating enemy of human personality. And a prominent physician declares, worry is the most subtle and destructive of all human diseases. Another physician tells us that thousands of people are ill because of what he calls dammed up anxiety. These sufferers have been unable to expel their anxieties, which have turned inward on the personality, causing many forms of ill health. The destructive quality of worry is indicated by the fact that the word itself is derived from an old Anglo-Saxon word meaning to choke. If someone were to put his fingers around your throat and press hard, cutting off the flow of vital power, it would be a dramatic demonstration of what you do to yourself by long-held and habitual worry. What then is a practical procedure which will help to eliminate abnormal worry from your experience? Practice the process of mind drainage. This should be done preferably before retiring at night to avoid the retention by the consciousness of worries while you sleep. During sleep, thoughts tend to sink more deeply into the subconscious. The last 5 minutes before going to sleep are of extraordinary importance, for in that brief period, the mind is most receptive to suggestion. It tends to absorb the last ideas that are entertained in waking consciousness. This process of mind drainage is important in overcoming worry, for fear thoughts, unless drained off, can clog the mind and impede the flow of mental and spiritual power. But such thoughts can be emptied from the mind and will not accumulate if they are eliminated daily. To drain them, utilize a process of creative imagination. Conceive of yourself as actually emptying your mind of all anxiety and fear. Picture all worry thoughts as flowing out of you as you would let water flow from a basin by removing the stopper. Repeat the following affirmation during this visualization. With God's help, I am now draining my mind of all anxiety and fear. This procedure may be further strengthened by imaginatively thinking of yourself as reaching into your mind and one by one removing your worries. A small child possesses an imaginative skill superior to that of adults. A child, for example, responds to the game of kissing away a hurt or throwing away a fear. This simple process works for the child because in his mind he believes that is actually the end of it. Therefore, hold an image of yourself as delivered from worry, and the drainage process will in time eliminate abnormal fear from your thoughts. Then, upon draining the mind, practice refilling it with thoughts of faith, hope, courage, expectancy. Say aloud such affirmations as the following: God is now filling my mind with courage, with peace, with calm assurance. God is now protecting me from all harm. God is now protecting my loved ones from all harm. God is now guiding me to right decisions. My good friend, the late Howard Chandler Christie, the famous artist, had a sound anti-worry technique. Scarcely ever have I known a man so filled with the joy and delight of life. Once I asked Mr. Christie, Howard, don't you ever worry? He laughed one of those big laughs of his. No, not on your life. I don't believe in it. Well, I commented, that is certainly a simple reason for not worrying. In fact, it almost seems too simple. You just don't believe in it, therefore you don't worry. But haven't you ever worried? I asked. He replied, well, yes, I did try it once. I noticed that everybody else seemed to be worrying, and I figured I must be missing something. So one day I made up my mind to try it. I set aside a day as my worry day. The night before my worry day, I went to bed early to get a good night's sleep so that I would be rested up to do a good job of worrying the next day. In the morning, I ate a good breakfast, for you can't worry successfully on an empty stomach. And then I got at my worrying. Well, I tried my best to worry until along about noon, but it just didn't make sense, so I gave it up. But I insisted. You must have some other method for overcoming worry. He did indeed, and it is perhaps the best method of all. Every morning, he said, I spend 15 minutes filling my mind full of God. When your mind is full of God, there is no room for worry. Having filled my mind full of God, then I have the time of my life all day long. Well, I think Howard Christie had a wonderful method for overcoming worry. So spend 15 minutes daily filling your mind full of God. Cram your mind full of the I believe philosophy, and you will have no mental room left to accommodate thoughts of worry and lack of faith. You will learn to break the worry habit. One of the most important and powerful facts is expressed in the following statement by William James, who was one of the wisest men America has produced. The greatest discovery of my generation, he said, is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. You can think your way to failure, and you can think your way to success. You can think your way to unhappiness. You can also think your way to happiness. The world in which you live is not primarily determined by outward conditions, but by the thoughts that habitually occupy your mind. Remember the wise words of Marcus Aurelius, who said, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." Ralph Waldo Emerson declared, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." A famous psychologist tells us, there is a deep tendency in human nature to become precisely like that which you habitually imagine yourself to be. Thoughts are things. They actually possess dynamic power. Think positively, and you will set in motion positive forces which will bring positive results. On the contrary, think negative thoughts, and you create around yourself an atmosphere propitious to the development of negative results. To change your circumstances, think positively. Do not passively accept unsatisfactory circumstances, but form a picture in your mind of circumstances as they should be. That is an astonishing law of prosperity and success. Let me tell you about a husband and wife, longtime friends of mine. For years, Jim, the husband, worked hard until finally he was in line for the presidency of his firm. There was no apparent reason why his ambition should not be realized, for by ability and experience he was qualified. However, when the appointment of a new president was made, he was bypassed. A man was brought in from the outside to fill the post. I arrived in his city just after the blow had fallen. The wife, Mary, was in an especially vindictive state of mind. At dinner, she bitterly outlined all that she would like to tell them. The intense disappointment, humiliation, frustration, focused in a burning anger which she poured out to her husband and to me. Jim, on the contrary, was quiet. Obviously hurt, disappointed, and bewildered, still he took it courageously. Mary wanted him to resign immediately. She urged him to tell them off and tell them plenty and then quit. He seemed disinclined to take this action, saying perhaps it was for the best, and he would go along with the new man and help him in any way he could. The wife then asked me what I would do. I told her that I would, like herself, undoubtedly feel disappointed and hurt. but that I would try not to allow hate to creep in. For animosity not only corrodes the soul, but disorganizes thought processes as well. I suggested that what we needed was divine guidance, a wisdom beyond ourselves in this problem. There was such an emotional content in the problem that we might possibly be incapable of thinking the matter through objectively and rationally. I suggested, therefore, that we have a few minutes of quietness, that we sit quietly in an attitude of fellowship. It was not easy for the wife to accommodate herself to the mood suggested, but basically she was an intelligent person and she joined in the plan. Presently, after a few quiet minutes, I offered a prayer. I requested peace of mind for Jim and Mary, and went a step further and even asked God's blessing upon the new appointee. I also prayed that Jim would be able to fit into the new administration and give effective service. After the prayer, with a sigh, the wife said, "Yes, I guess that's the way to do it. When I knew you were coming to dinner, I feared that you would tell us to take a Christian position on this. Frankly, I didn't feel like doing that. I was boiling inwardly. But of course, I realized that the right answer to this problem is to be found through that approach. I will try it faithfully, as difficult as it may be." She smiled wanly, but the animus was gone. Gradually, they became fairly contented under the new arrangement. They were able to overcome their disappointment and ill will. Jim even confided to me that he liked the new president. He told me that he often called him in for consultation and seemed to lean on him. They went to the fullest extent to be cooperative. 2 years passed. I arrived in their city one day and telephoned them. "Oh, I'm so excited I can hardly speak," Mary said. I commented that that was an unusual state for her. Ignoring this remark, she cried, "Oh, the most wonderful thing has happened. Mr. So-and-so, naming the president, has been selected by another company at a big promotion for a special job which will take him out of our organization into a much better position," and she posed the question, "Guess what? Jim has been notified that he is now president of this company. Come over right away and let the three of us give thanks together." Later, Jim said, "I'm beginning to realize that Christianity isn't theoretical after all. We have solved a problem according to well-defined, spiritually scientific principles. I shudder to think," he said, "of the terrible mistake we would have made had we not gone at this problem according to the formula of right thinking and positive thinking. It's a very great law in problem solving. Think right and things go right." To reduce tension, practice the easy does it attitude. Do everything more slowly, less hectically, and without pressure. My friend Branch Rickey, famous baseball man, told me that he would not use a player, no matter how well he hits, fields, or runs, if he over-presses. To be a successful big league baseball player, there must be a flow of easy power through every action. The most effective way to hit a ball is by the easy method, where all the muscles are flexible and operating in correlated power. Try to kill the ball and you will slice it or maybe miss altogether. That is true in golf, in baseball, in every sport, and it's the same in all success. Analyze people who are really efficient, and they always seem to do things easily with a minimum of effort. In so doing, they release maximum power. One of my friends, a famous businessman who handles important affairs and varied interests, always seems at ease. I inquired the secret of his obviously easy power. "Oh, it isn't much of a secret," he said. "I just try to keep myself in tune with God, that's all. Every morning after breakfast," he explained, "my wife and I go into the living room for a period of quietness. One of us reads aloud some inspirational piece. Following that, we sit quietly, each praying or meditating according to his own manner. Then together we affirm the thought that God is now filling us with strength and quiet energy. This is a definite 15-minute ritual, and we never miss it. We couldn't get along without it. As a result, I always seem to feel that I have peace and energy. So said this efficient man who demonstrates easy power. Many people nowadays practice this or similar techniques for reducing tension. One February morning, I was rushing down the long veranda of a Florida hotel with a handful of mail just in from my office in New York. I'd come to Florida for a midwinter vacation, but hadn't seemed to get out of the routine of dealing with my mail the first thing in the morning. As I hurried by, headed for a couple of hours' work, a friend from Georgia who was sitting in a rocking chair with his hat partially over his eyes stopped me in my headlong rush and said in his slow and pleasant southern drawl, "Where you rushing for, Doctor? That's no way to do down here in the Florida sunshine. Come over and sit in one of these rocking chairs and help me practice one of the greatest of the arts." Mystified, I said, "Help you practice one of the greatest of the arts?" "Yes," he replied, "an art that's passing out. Not many people know how to do it anymore." "Well," I asked, "please tell me what it is." He explained, "I'm practicing the art of just sitting in the sun. Sit here and let the sun fall on your face. It's warm like and it smells good. It makes you feel peaceful inside. Did you ever think about the sun?" he asked. "It never hurries, never gets excited. It just works slowly and makes no noise. Doesn't push any buzzers, doesn't answer any telephones. Just goes on a-shining. And the sun does more work in an instant than you and I could ever do in a lifetime. When I sit in the sun, it puts some rays into me that give me energy. That is, when I take time to sit in the sun. So throw that mail over in the corner," he said, "and sit down here with me." I did so, and when finally I went to my room and got at my mail, I finished it in no time at all. And there was a good part of the day left for vacation activities and for more sitting in the sun. The secret is to keep the mind quiet, avoiding all hectic reactions, and to practice peaceful thinking. The essence of the art is to keep the tempo down, to do your work on the basis of the most efficient conservation of energy. Get some plan for practicing relaxed power. One of the best such plans was suggested to me by Captain Eddie Rickenbacker. A busy man, he manages to handle his responsibilities in a manner indicating reserves of power. I was filming a program for television with him. The filming was delayed long beyond the time anticipated. I noted, however, that the captain showed no signs of agitation. He did not become nervous or anxious. He did not pace up and down, putting in frantic calls to his office. There were a couple of old rocking chairs there. He sat down in one rocker in a very relaxed manner. I commented on his lack of tension. "I know how busy you are," I said, "and I marvel at how you can be so imperturbable." Then I said, "Eddie, I know you have some technique for relaxing. Let me have it." He gave me a formula which he says he uses frequently, and I now use it myself, and it really works. It may be outlined as follows. First, collapse physically. Practice this several times a day. Let go every muscle in your body, getting your body into complete looseness. Form a mental picture of a huge burlap sack of potatoes. Then mentally cut the bag, allowing the potatoes to roll out. Think of yourself as the sack. What is more relaxed than an empty burlap sack? The second element in the formula is to drain the mind of all irritation, all resentment, disappointment, frustration, and annoyance. Third, think spiritually. Turn the mind at regular intervals to God. This keeps you in tune with God's harmony. It refills you with peace. This three-point program is an excellent method for relaxing and living on the basis of easy does it.